joining us from San Miguel de Allende.
I
Uh,
am.
and I,
Beautiful.
I had the pleasure of meeting you when you were touring with your music in Mexico City. And I got to see you perform, which was amazing. And you stayed at the artist residency that
Yeah.
we had signed. So it was a wonderful experience getting to meet you. And we've spoken many times. Uh,
Yes.
and we've shown your film as
Yes.
so I'm excited to get the opportunity to talk to you about your life of creativity and all the various things that you do because you're like a multi hyphenate, music, art, photography, film, you're everywhere.
True.
So tell me, first of all, what brought you to Mexico?
Initially I came here to write with Carol Ann Duffy, who at the time was the poet laureate for Queen Elizabeth. And my best and dearest friend is Jennifer Clement, who is a well-known writer. She wrote the first book on Basquiat. And she encouraged me to come to San Miguel, which was her home, and to write with Carol Ann. Um, and so I spent 10 days here, and it changed my life. That 10 days opened up so many different doors for me that I wasn't expecting. And so Mexico became a place that I saw as potential for my art, and that's why I'm here. That's why I've stayed here.
Or let's talk about your art. I mean, I don't even know where to start. Like there's so many avenues within your art. I mean, the film, what is I can't remember the name of your film off the top of my head. What was the name of that?
What's in a name?
What's the name? Right. I mean, I remember you sent the link to me when you were in the residency, and I was like, oh my God, we have to include this in our Pride show.
Yeah.
So you do film and music and photography and writing and all these various different things. We're showing an image from, well, what series is that from? I want to say the image is from, like, you mentioned something about witchcraft, or I can't remember what. It
um, I, I don't see the image, but yeah.
was playing cards at a table, a beautiful.
Oh, that image. Yes, for the Bureau of Queer Art. Being part of this campaign is really important to me. And I started that photo project in 2010, actually. And we showed those photos. I wanted to talk about the narrative of these myths that we have in the queer community. I wanted to talk about butch femme. I wanted to talk about different queer identities, people who were transitioning or in the process of transitioning, and tell their story. And so I I worked with this photographer, Jessica Lauren Lipton, who actually took the photos for me, because there was a point in time in my life where I felt really invisible, and I wasn't sure how to express that. And the only way I could do that was to admit that I couldn't really see myself. And like when you gaze into a mirror, like being able to really see yourself, but being in this trans identity, I felt like I didn't have a connection to my image, to my body. So I started asking my friends who are amazing photographers, to start taking my photo so that I could see myself and be more comfortable in my own skin. And so when we started shooting these photos, I wanted to talk about um, this interplay of gender, um, if our relationships that, um, or my relationships that I hadn't seen as successful as some of the heteronormative narratives that I had seen, like you find someone, your life partner, you get married, you have a house. And I had this kind of, but I didn't know how to fit into that framework necessarily. And so I was like, how do we have long-term relationships? How do we talk about our friendships? How do we talk about the interplay of gender? How do we talk about um, these these ideas? And so this was a process of me really figuring out my identity as a transmasculine person in photos.
And do you, I mean, that those photos were from a little while ago, and I'm kind of curious how your identity has evolved through that process and who you feel you are today.
Um, the photos had a lot of impact. We showed them first at the Butch Voices Conference in Oakland, California in 2013. And it was an image of a butch femme couple, where the butch was looking for work and the femme was felt invisible as a queer person. Um, Dating high femmes, I found that oftentimes they weren't seen as queer because they were doing their makeup and they were wearing corsets and they had silk stockings and they looked very, very feminine. And so a lot of times it was amazing what men would say to them and how they would be approached. And so I knew that I didn't understand my trans masculinity. At that time, I identified as a dandy butch queer because I love fashion and I love vintage clothing and I love the way that I feel very powerful in men's clothing. And then I was like, but it goes beyond that. I feel more comfortable in masculine thinking, in masculine approaches to things. And so I kind of discovered that while I didn't want to transition physically, I wanted to transition emotionally into accepting this part of myself. Yes. So they were in varying states of transition, and through our conversations at the table, even during the photo shoot, I was able to say, I don't want to physically transition, that I felt like it was important to stay in my female body, but I still wanted to acknowledge um, that was part of me, that I felt like all these years I had been in this body that I didn't really understand. And there was a kind of acceptance that happened with that.
Sure.
And power that comes from being in a female body, but identifying as transmasculine and being able to be an advocate for that difference in society, because we've been here forever. And it was just nice to be able to lean into that and say, this is an identity that I feel comfortable in. I never felt comfortable in saying, oh, I'm a lesbian. Lesbian still is just like this chilling word to me. But when I said, hey, I'm a queer person, I was like, I'm finally home.
And that sort of intellectual and emotional transition as well, I imagine freed up a lot of space for you in the world to be yourself and to find your creativity as well.
Yes. Well, I have a lot of privilege, and I realize that. I don't take that lightly. Um, like you said, I'm the decorated artist, but because I'm a queer artist, there's still limitations to a lot of people finding me and finding my work.
We know that very well at the Bureau of Queer Art.
Having performed since I was 7,
Uh,
having, this multi-award winning movie that took over film festivals around the world, winning London and Hong Kong and France and New York and San Francisco were huge accomplishments. And being a performer in the music industry and having a really powerful voice, still, I would have to abandon my personhood to be able to fit into the narratives that they wanted me to fit into. And I just was never interested in that. And it's very real that, a lot of times when you're sitting in an office alone really late at night with industry people, there is a lot of uncomfortable conversation that takes place. And um, I wasn't willing to give someone my body in order to have a record contract. Like that just didn't seem like a fair trade to me. And so I continued to be an independent artist, but I found so much strength in doing that. Like I have so many skills as queer people. I think that we are gifted with this incredible imagination, and our art is groundbreaking in a lot of ways. It opens up a lot of conversations that people don't want to have.
right.
And yeah, so I
And
guess
it's also like I think part of that is growing up in a world where we're not seeing ourselves. So we have to imagine a world. We have to go inside of ourselves to find ourselves in a way that maybe isn't necessarily the same for the heteronormative cisgender community. So I think by by creating these images of ourselves, it allows other people to find ways to see themselves. I say queer because I don't believe LGBT really covers the diversity within the community. And if you can't find yourself, as you said, like in lesbian or one of the other letters, queer is the umbrella. It's like, oh, there is actually a rainbow diversity there that gets a little bit missed in the mainstream in LGBT.
and because we, in the modern art world, we see these depictions of love and relationships, just like the reason that I decided to create these images was I didn't see myself in those images. There might be two beautiful women standing together and naked in the jungle of someplace, this beautiful lush garden, having some sort of interplay, but not necessarily one that represents love and connection and um, vulnerability and openness. And so to see art that depicts people like me is so important. I want to be surrounded by those images because that is inspiring to the ways that I'm going to call those people into my life, those beautiful people, my friendships, my lovers, my 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 queer family. Um, and so to see and be part of a community that is creating that kind of art for our families, for ourselves, is
Right.
very me.
Yeah. And I transitioning over to the film Call Me by My Name. Call Me by My Name? Yes.
What's in a name?
What's in a Name? Okay, sorry. Now I'm like blending films together. It's gonna be a mishmash. Um, I saw a lot of that struggle in that particular film as well. And it's interesting to see that struggle with so much confidence and to know you personally in it's not a disconnected experience to watch your film because I have met you and sat at a table with you. And so I'm curious how that film came about. And I would love to hear about the impact of it because it has been so successful.
Um, well, COVID COVID happened, I was commissioned by Theater First in San Francisco to write a one-person play, which I had never done before. And they said, "You're such a great storyteller. It would be great to see you on stage telling your story." And everything closed, and we decided that um, that while I was working with an acting coach, because I'd never really acted before, I'd had little parts in little movies, and I usually got typecast as like the devil or this gang member or like something like hard, like this hard person. Um, and
Which is not the way that you present in any office or in any fashion. So that's
oh,
interesting.
at it. I'm good at it. Uh, I have uh, I have a line in one of my poems from my new album that says, um, "I have enough metaphors from the emotionally poor to tell you how not to fuck with me," and I think that shows up in the way that I act. Like I can borrow these things because as queer people, you get a lot of stuff coming at you sometimes, and to navigate that is really interesting. And that's why you see that confidence, because I have learned to love myself through all of those challenges. Um, but I was working with the acting coach, and she said, it seems kind of lonely because I had talked to some people that had closed theaters, and I said, "Do you mind if I come in and film um, this one person play?" And they were like, "Of course, you can have this space." And my acting coach was like, "Why don't you make a film?" Like, and I was like, I don't know. Why don't we make a film? So I pitched it to my director, John Tracy, who is a very well-known director. And he said, "Yeah, let's do that." Um, and so we filmed it in like a week. And and right before he was coming, he said, "So do you have all the places that we're like, are we going to be able to go into these places because of COVID, your locations that you have?" And I was like, "Locations? Yeah." Uh,
Like a whole different way of thinking of
yeah,
things.
like, oh my God, we have locations. I'm writing this. I didn't even think about where we're going to shoot it.
Right.
So I was hanging out with a friend um, who invited me to her new ranch here in San Miguel, and she showed me this penance chapel that was on her land that she had restored, and it was built in like the 1800s, and she had been restoring it for a year, and I was the first person in there, both of us, from the outside, and she was talking to me about the history of the place. And I'd never heard of a penance chapel. And she said, "Yeah, like if you had committed adultery, or you were queer, or you had these sins that you needed to confess, you could come here and you would be in this space alone until the priest came and released you." And it would be this series of prayer and flogging, because this particular church was associated with flogging. And you could feel that energy in the space. It was the first day of shooting in the film. You see me kind of going through all of these different emotions, and um, and the director kept calling, like, "Now you feel like this, now you feel like this, now you're bored, now you're this, now you're lonely, now you're angry, now you feel like you've been here for 15 years." And so I was going through all of those emotions, and it was like I opened a vortex for all of this stuff to like come in, and I felt in my entire body, like I couldn't be in the space and I had to leave for a moment. And I was sitting outside and I began crying um and people, the whole crew just gave me some space to kind of process these emotions. And I remembered that in my pack, one of my one of my girlfriends at the time had left me a cookie, an oatmeal cookie that she made for me that morning. And she said, "Here, you can eat this and just remember how much I love you and that I'm there with you today." And I took out the cookie and I had my head in my hand. I was holding the cookie, and there were a lot of like rescue animals on the property, and there was this one little tiny like little pony that was running around the property, and I was sitting there and I felt the cookie like being snatched from my hand, and I look up and there's this little pony that's just like chewing my cookie, and we're looking at each other, and I burst into tears, and the director comes running, John comes running to me, and he's like, "Are you okay?" And I looked at him and I said, "I'm fine, but the pony ate my cookie." And so that became part of like allowing this healing, allowing this love of a cookie, this support from people giving you space to have emotion, and then being able to laugh through it and say, okay, I'm coming back into myself. And all of these things are part of me. And I want to bring that to the film. And I think that that really is there. And I took the energy of the people that had been in that space and confessed all of these sins and this contrition. And I said, let's really forgive and let's really accept where we are in this space. And to have one long shot of being in this space, having this monologue was a challenge, but I feel like I had a lot of help.
That's a good point to transition to talk about the importance of having safe space and community. And that supports not just, the process of transition, but also the process of creativity and the opportunities that a safe space and community can present.
Yes. And sometimes I feel like I don't have community. Sometimes I feel like, wow, I'd like to be in New York, or I'd like to be in Mexico City, or I'd like to be in California. Like there's a lot of places where sometimes I feel pretty lonely in the creative space of being a queer artist. And I think the movie, some of the impact that the movie had um, was for people to write these beautiful letters, hundreds of letters that came in and still do, about saying, wow, to overcome all of this stuff, I feel you, and I feel like you're part of my community, and I feel like sharing your movie with other people lets people love me in a different way and open up new communication for me. And so I'm very proud of the whole team and how we created this for our community.
Well, I mean, the outcome of it is a gorgeous film. Beyond like, the emotional impact of it, the visuals of it, the narrative of it,
Mhm.
it, as a queer person, is very, very easy for me to understand and connect to. Did you get responses from outside of the queer community as well?
From parents, from grandparents that were like, wow, I wasn't sure how to talk to my grandkid about their gender presentation, like saying, hey, I want to be called they, them. I haven't really been able to, find work that really speaks to me. And there is a resurgence of the movie. This year, the director came to me, has been coming to Mexico quite often to speak to me about this hybrid of showing the film and then having me come out. At the end of the film, there's a moment where I come out in this gold robe and I'm on stage, and you can kind of get a sense of who I am in this world. And so I come back out in that same outfit, but I'm real. It's like I walked out of the screen, and I perform and I talk about where I'm at now. And I wanted to talk about creatives. I had read this quote by Brené Brown that says, "We are all creative people. And if we don't use our creativity in the right way, we'll get really imaginative about how to do it in destructive ways." And it metastasizes into rage and anger and fear. And so to be able to tack that on and say, in this world, like being worried about traveling because I have identification that says that I'm an X, you know, having the freedom to do that. I remember the day when I was choosing that for myself, not male or female, but being able to have the freedom to say, I'm non-binary, to be able to have this language out there was
Right.
so beautiful to me. And now it's terrifying because it's
Right.
like,
It's taken away from people. And when you go to renew that document, there's no guarantee that the option will be available.
right. And so it just kind of, I have a lot of faith in where we're going. I have a lot of faith that art is going to be the thing that helps save all of our lives. And I feel that the queer voice really needs to have space in there. So I'm super honored to be part of such a great movement. This is a movement. It's not just a gallery space. Um, it's not just a small project. It is a movement that I'm proud to be part of.
I'm super excited always to have your participation, and I'll extend an invitation to you for the Immortal Queer Art Fair for Dia de los Muertos in Mexico City. We'll have a bar, and we'll have you perform and show your film at the art fair as well. So
Wonderful. Yeah,
I'll send you
so
the
hybrid. We could do the hybrid play. That'd be
right.
great.
And we have a theater as well in the space. We have the bar scene, but we also have the theater itself. So we have like this multifaceted ability to exhibit not only your artwork in this form, but your artwork and music, which I got to see you at what is the name of that speakeasy jazz club in Mexico City?
Yes, Parker and Lennox. Yeah.
Parker and Lennox, and it was like phenomenal to watch you perform. Jealous of that sort of confidence to be able to stand on a stage, because if you put me on a stage, in front of people, I can't, I don't function very well. Like this is very good for me, but like in front of a lot of people, no, not so much. So I really appreciate you and your spirit and the creativity that you bring to the world. So thank you for participating in this 50 postcards project.
Yeah.
I'm really hoping that people will look at this as an opportunity to expand the horizons of what queer art is, in the sort of in the vernacular of what queer art is, because it does tend to be stuck in a very male-oriented 80s, 90s sort of area in the general public. But also, I feel like, if you get 50 5x7 postcards, do a pop-up show in your home, in your office, and whatever space you can, and create that safe space for other people to be who they are, and show the world that you're there to support safe spaces for people.
It's, I'm really excited to share it with a whole world of fans. Like, this is, these are people in my community that I really want to support. And so we're working on our special campaign as well to let people know where they can buy these cards, how they can participate, and what this project really means. So I'm really excited to be part of this. Thank you so much, Michael. I really appreciate it. I appreciate your spirit, and it's not easy to do all of this stuff and to stay motivated and to continue the work, but that's what activism is. Art is activism.
Yeah. And I've had some artists who I've worked with for years who rejected participation in the show because they felt it was too political. And my statement is, as soon as you participate in a Euroqueer art show, your work is automatically politicized by who you are.
Yeah.
Like, it's not us politicizing it. I would
Right.
like to continue to have, festivals and celebrations, but the world is viewing us as another, and we need to bring things back into focus. So, so thank you very much for taking the time to meet with me today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Michael.
Like water being poured from a vessel onto a high surface. I am unable to predict with any certainty where that water will heat. I see it shattering while splattering as liquid does. It drips and gets into the most intimate crevices, saturating every strand of me, lubricating rusty arpeggios, spontaneously vocalizing, just 'cause I like to hear the notes. And whether I speak or whether I sing, it begins to pour out of me so abundantly that it won't be contained, it won't dissolve or be drained out of my veins. This is just the way I came. So how can I intellectually comprehend grasping after worldliness without accepting all the richness that resides in me just as easily? You see, it's the debris of transparency that obstructs what we see. But for too long I have sought your approval through apologizing first, and I never sought retribution second, even for the ill will that you whispered over me like curses when I was too unschooled to know how cruel you could really be. You see, it's hard for me to explain to you plainly how I was given the tools and ammunition to be reckless and dangerous with myself out of desperation and urgency. But I have dug enough inexplicably deep trenches to hide in, to fortify me against any encroachment upon my fate, my lot, or my destiny. But I fear that this ain't enough to protect me. See, I'm grasping again. But no matter what the conflict or the diptych or the horse shit, wisdom and revelation will eventually rain reason on me. It's like I'm a torrential drenching, just like sweating. It drips off my fingertips and it mingles with the scent of a Sharpie pen, and it soaks through quad-ruled composition papers that I have bound tightly, hacked away neatly, all stacked away for another rainy day. But just like water being poured from a vessel onto a hard surface, I am unable to predict with any certainty where that water will be. Like water, like water, like I'm just like water. Art saved my life. Art always saves lives.